Hello and welcome back. In this video, we'll cover some of the key aspects of working with data table variables. We'll create two data table variables and merge their values together, and then we'll filter the unwanted columns out. In the end, we'll sort the rows of the resulting data table in ascending order. But first, let's go through the basics. Data table variables store data structured in a tabular form. That means any information organized in rows and columns. This variable type is similar to a spreadsheet. As a key difference, data table cells are individually identified through the column name or column index and the row index, with both indexes starting from 0. Spreadsheet cells are individually identified through the column letter and the row number, which starts at 1. UiPath Studio includes many activities that output data table variables. In this demo, we'll focus on the Build Data Table activity, which is largely used to define the structure of a data table. For this demo, we've already configured two Build Data Table activities. Let's examine the first example to see all of the configuration options. The Build Data Table window enables us to set the number of columns in our data table and the type of data that they contain. Let's click the Edit button to see more column configuration options. The Edit column window is displayed. The first field that we see is the column name. This value can be used to reference this column in our process. Next, we have the Data Type field. The columns can comprise any type of data. We can browse for types and select the ones that suit our automation scenario. There are some additional column customization options. We'll take a quick look at them before moving on. The Allow Null checkbox allows for specifying if the column can contain blank cells. Next, the Auto Increment feature is available only if the data type is set to int32. If selected, the value of this column is automatically incremented by 1 every time a new row is added. Since our type is string, it's currently not available to us. We can add any default cell value in the Default Value field. If we select the Unique checkbox, we can make sure that all of the values are different from one another. This can be of great help when dealing with types of data such as user IDs to ensure a high-quality output. We can also adjust the maximum length of the value in a cell. Let's click OK to return to the Build Data Table window. We can easily rearrange the columns by dragging and dropping them to the intended position. For demonstration purposes, we've used the Build Data Table activity to add values to our data table variables. In business scenarios, however, there are many efficient ways to achieve that. For example, the Read Range activity captures the data in a spreadsheet and stores it in a data table variable. In this demo, we'll work with two predefined data table variables. The first one, Users, contains information about the members of a library, their name, unique ID, department, and phone number. The second variable, which is called Overdue Books, contains data related to all of the currently borrowed books, the author's name, the title, the unique book ID, as well as the ID of the borrower. Next, we want to collect the names and phone numbers of the library members with overdue books and store them in a single variable. To do that, let's add a Join Data Table activity and open the Join wizard. The Join Data Table activity combines rows from two tables by using values common to each other, according to a join rule. The Join wizard helps us configure the properties of the Join Data Tables activity. The Input and Output Data Table fields let us control which tables need to be joined and where we want to store the result. The Join Type property determines the type of join operation that we want to use. Our options are inner, left, and full. In our case, the join type is inner because our resulting data table must include rows extracted from both our tables according to the join rule that we'll configure. Any rows that do not meet the rule are removed from the resulting table. The data table that we'll provide in the Input Data Table 1 field is Overdue Books as there might be members who borrowed multiple books. The users variable goes in the input data table 2 field. And let's create a new variable for the output. We'll call it borrowed books. Now it's time to determine the join criterion. We want to join all of the rows which have the same value in the ID column. To do this, we'll select the equal operation and enter the names of the two ID columns. Now we've just finished configuring the join data table activity, so we can click OK. Let's proceed to the next activity in the workflow. To be able to print our result to the output panel, we'll use the output data table activity, which converts an input data table to a string variable. The input is borrowed books, and the output needs to be stored in a new string variable. Let's hit Ctrl+K and name this variable borrowed books string. We'll also change the name of the activity to output borrowed books to text for increased workflow readability. We'll display the content of the variable that we've just created using a writeLine activity. Let's run the workflow. The output panel displays the correct results, so our project works as expected. However, there are some unneeded details that we can filter out to prevent clutter. Specifically, the ID column is included twice, and the department one is not relevant. As a result, we'll use two remove data column activities. Let's place them above the output data table activity. The first one will remove the duplicate column from the borrowed books data table. Since both ID columns have the same name, let's use the index of the column that we want to remove, which is 6. We'll also rename this activity. Now we can move on to the next one. Once again, the data table is borrowed books. Now, we can use either the index or the name to identify the column to be removed. So, we can type department between quotation marks. Let's run the workflow again. Great! The unwanted columns have disappeared. Now, for the last touch, let's sort the data according to the user ID to make sure that users are contacted to return all of the books that they've borrowed. Let's add a sort data table activity right before the output data table 1. We'll add the borrowed books variable both as input and as output variable, and the ID column in the name input field under sorting column. By default, the order is ascending. We'll leave it as it is. Alright, let's run this one more time. And it works. With this, we conclude our demo on working with data tables in UiPath Studio. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.